Hi everyone, this is Subha. I am going to discuss an interesting situation in this RMP video discussion. It's a very small scenario, apparently easy to understand, but actually very tricky. Let me read out the scenario first, followed by the option choices, and then we will discuss. The scenario says that why should multiple stakeholders be encouraged to document their project assumptions? Pretty obvious question, but the answer is not that obvious. Their different perceptions of terms or concepts help identify the assumptions that need clarification. B, capturing various perspectives in the risk register help the stakeholders reach a consensus. C, input from multiple stakeholders can help verify if an assumption is true or false. And D, their insights add variety to the risk register, expanding the range of possible assumptions. See, before we talk about the scenario, this is important to understand that what is assumption by nature. Assumption is an obvious concept. Like I said, the scenario is pretty obvious, but the answer is not that obvious because this is like a commonly discussed topic in my project program and portfolio management classes. And trust me, even the most senior delegates are not rightly aware of the concept of assumptions and constraints. Assumption, by definition, is any situation which is hypothetically considered as true because of the lack of information or unavailability of information related to that event or situation. Or in other words, the facts, the actualized facts are not available for that situation. So you have limited information available or maybe no information available for that situation. And you need that information for project planning, project execution. So you assume that if this happens, then this is going to happen. But this is what assumption is. Assumption is that ground, that foundation, along with the constraints, dependencies, risk, on which any project or program stands. That foundation shakes, the project is going to fall down. So accordingly, assumptions play an important role in project planning. Very important role, critical role in project planning. And this is exactly what is asked in this question, that why should multiple stakeholders be encouraged to document their project assumptions? Like, what is that one core purpose which is needed or which is the underlying factor for assumptions discussion? One by one, let's check the option choices. A, their different perceptions of terms or concepts help identify the assumption that need clarification. Now, this is quite a possibility because an assumption may have different meaning to different people, right? For instance, I assume that whatever I'm explaining is making sense to you. Whatever I just explained makes sense to you. Because based on this assumption, I will I have that clarity that the follow-up conversation is going to be understood on. Right? So accordingly, if multiple stakeholders are available in a planning discussion or in a meeting, their perspective for a respective assumptions related to resources, number of resources, their availability, their capability, their capacity, schedule related dependencies, stakeholders related needs, expectations, like multiple things. Multiple assumptions can be there, right? Customers related assumptions can also be there. Wherever you do not have a clear factual understanding available and you need that ground for planning and project execution, you have to make assumptions. And there could be many assumptions in a project. So as you move along in a project life cycle, some assumptions get closed, some assumptions change their state, some assumptions are invalidated as well. Right? So based on because as you move along the life cycle, more and more data is available, more and more clarity is available, and based on that, you get that better understanding, or that blurry picture gets clarified that if assumption is true or false. But different perspectives are needed for a respective assumption for better clarification, better understanding, or better ground for project planning and documentation. So A is quite a possibility. So every stakeholder in that room should align, should converge on the same meaning of assumption and same meaning of what if this assumption is closed, or what if this assumption is going to be like something different. If it nullifies, if it invalidates, then what is going to be the perspective for the project, right? So their perceptions, different perceptions of assumption related data, terms, conditions, concepts, what if scenarios is needed. So we are going to keep A as a good choice, and let's check B, C, and D. Of course, there could be multiple answers to this question, but we need to check that which answer is best suited out of the 4 available choices. B. Capturing various perspectives in the risk register help the stakeholders reach a consensus. This is clearly not the right answer because, first of all, assumption is not documented in risk register. Of course, assumption has a separate artifact, assumption law. You can have assumption documented, high-level assumptions in project charter, detailed assumption in project scope statement, or generally in project plan. But risk register is definitely not the artifact. But yes, you do have those risks documented in risk register where an assumption is going to be invalidated or becomes false. So when an assumption becomes false, it's automatically is a risk or an issue, right? So yes, that is documented, but the assumption in its actual state is not documented in the risk register, right? So B is out. C, input from multiple stakeholders can help verify if an assumption is true or false. Assumption by definition is hopeful, positive set of words, always considered as true until it becomes false, right? So as per the original shape or original discussion, assumptions are supposed to be true. Otherwise, they would not be considered as assumption. So if you have to verify if an assumption is true or false, that is not during the documentation part. That is during the evaluation and assessment part of those assumptions. And that usually occurs during the risk monitoring and risk management exercise, not as part of documenting the assumption exercise, right? While you document the assumption after doing the necessary discussions and mutual understanding, which happens in A, you just document that and you keep an eye. By you, I mean the project manager ideally, or the project team and the stakeholders. So you keep an eye on the assumption that if an assumption is changing, assisted because of more data availability, and if yes, then yes, you probably have to check the risk register for possible risk action, or probably you will have to document it in the issue register if, because of that assumption falsification, a situation has occurred in the capacity of issue. So C is also wrong. D, their insights add variety to the risk register, expanding the range of possible assumptions. See, if I talk about the stats that I receive on my regular Wednesday RMP post, that was a mixed opinion between A, B, C, and D. So most of the responses were inclined towards A, option A, followed by B, followed by D, and then C. So around 20% of the participants mentioned that D is the correct answer because assumption documentation is encouraged because you get a variety of perspective to the risk register. It's like, again, the same thing that I mentioned in option B, that assumptions are not documented in risk register. The risk related to assumptions, yes, that can be documented in risk register, but the assumptions are not documented in risk register in their original state. And the other reason why D is wrong is this perspective that you need a variety of assumptions. I mean, it's not a buffet. Of course, it's not about like variety or the number of assumptions. It's about the quality of data. So if an assumption is supposed to be an assumption because it qualifies for that, then you need to have the right ground, the right perspective, the right what is available with that. And if if something is just documented for the sake of being documented, then of course this is not going to be a good idea, right? Or at least this is not going to be the best thing to go for in this case. Of course, you do not need a range of assumptions. You need the realistic assumptions to consider for planning, for discussion, for brainstorming, for elicitation, and this and that. So D is also out. And on this ground, of course, A is going to be the right answer because we need assumptions so that the different perspectives, the different opinion and the different insight of stakeholders will help you identify that if assumption need more clarification or if all the relevant stakeholders are agreed to that, and then they document it, and then they keep an eye and they keep on monitoring it until the assumption start changing a state. And in that case, either the assumption is going to be closed because it's not an assumption anymore, as we have more data available and it's a fact now, or maybe an assumption is falsified. And in that case, probably you need to go for a risk response strategy or an issue management strategy. I hope you like this explanation. For your exam, assumptions, constraints, risk response, and the connection of assumption and constraint to the risk planning is pretty much needed. It's like the one of the fundamental aspects of any project plan. So keep that in consideration. That exam is definitely going to test you on this. Feel free to drop your comments and feedback in the comment area. Don't forget to like this video. I will be back very soon with a new RMP scenario. Till then, take care. Goodbye.